But this is mercy. Jesus, mercy, Jesus, ampersand, outcast. And I'm Kirk Cooper, and this is K7, or it's also called Miriam's Kitchen. If that is where you're supposed to be, then good. If it's not, this would be the time to exit gracefully and find your correct class. Hey, y'all come on in. Y'all are from First Pres, right? Yes. Are you more? Okay. All right, so my name is Kurt, and we're going to spend some time talking about awkwardness. How many of you have ever been in an awkward situation? Okay, good. Like, you sitting there is sort of an awkward situation for me. Does anyone want to share an awkward situation that's happened in their life, as long as it's very quick? I can cover up the microphone if that would help. Anyone wants to share an awkward situation? Let's talk about some awkward situations that we've all been in, okay? Have you ever been walking like down a row, like maybe this row, and someone's coming your way, and like you go this way and they go this way, and then you go back like this way, and you do that little body language thing where like you break down and neither one of you can, yeah. Like, I'd say that was like minimally awkward, but it is just a little bit awkward, especially if they're a complete stranger, or if they're like your total crush. Susie, you will not believe what happened. Ran into Bobby on the aisle. We couldn't get out of each other's way. It's like it was meant to be. It's totally my Jacob. Okay. Have you ever been in a situation where, guys, have you ever been in a situation where you've gone to shake someone's hand and instead they've given you the fist? And then when you switch to the fist, they switch to the hand, and back and forth, and then eventually it's like, you just end up doing this? Yeah. Or maybe you've been in a situation where you've tried to hug someone, and maybe you were going for the side hug, and they went for the full-on hug, and you weren't sure where to go from that. And then you weren't sure how long to hold on, or how many pats. Just general rule for that is 3 pats. As soon as the third pat, it's probably time to let go, unless it's like a long lost, friend. But okay, has anyone ever asked you for money and you not had any? Has anyone come up to you on the street, like a street person, and asked you for money, and you had some but you don't want to give it to them? Have any of you? I used to work in a church. I still work in a church, but I used to work in a church, and there were only 3 people on staff. And people would just walk into my office sometimes, complete strangers, and they would ask for money. Do you think that's a little bit awkward? They would just ask me for money. They would say, can I have money to get? And they'd always have a story, but they would ask for money. Has anyone ever been in a situation where, well, we'll just stop right there for right now. That's enough awkward situation. I just want you to get that feeling. How do you feel when you're in that situation? How do you feel physically in that situation? You can participate here. Well, okay, uncomfortable would definitely be a word. But what kind of sensations do you have? Do you ever feel like the blood is kind of rushing to your face some? Like you're getting hot right here all of a sudden? Like, that's something that I sometimes feel when it's awkward. Do you ever feel like the hair maybe is raising on the back of your neck? Or you just, it's like, how many of you have watched American Idol before? Now, I don't watch American Idol, okay? I'll just tell you that I'm not a huge reality television fan. But one of the reasons I don't watch American Idol is because I can't stand to watch people embarrass themselves. You know those early parts of the season where someone gets up there and is like, I'm going to sing, I Dreamed a Dream from Les Miserables, and they sing like me, they're like, I dreamed a dream, and these famous singers and like artists are looking at them, and it's just, to me, I can't stand it. Like, I can't stand to watch that because it's so awkward. It's like you're bad, and it's embarrassing. I think that every single one of us has felt awkward, and I think every single one of us has looked at someone and thought they are awkward before. And maybe you're the kind of person who feels awkward all the time. Or maybe you're the kind of person who just doesn't like those kind of people because you don't want to feel awkward, you never feel awkward, and they just bring you down. Well, what I want us to do this week is I just want to look at 3 passages in the Gospel of John, and in each one of those passages we're going to see Jesus deal with something that's kind of awkward, like someone who is awkward, or an awkward situation. And I want us to see how he deals with it, and then what we might learn about how he deals with it. Hey, come on in, guys. I think we still have seats. What's up, Ryan? Are y'all running?
Yeah.
Y'all are running. So we're going to look at Jesus and outcast. We're going to look at some outcast, and we're going to talk about mercy. And before we get started, we kind of need to understand what mercy is. Does anyone know what mercy is? Can anyone give me a definition of mercy? Paul.
Is it forgiveness?
Okay, there is forgiveness in mercy. That's a part of it. I wouldn't say that's the whole definition. That's certainly a big part of it. What else? Does anyone else have any kind of definition of how we might define mercy?
Not giving them what they deserve.
Okay, no, who said that? Right here. What's your name? Ethan. Nice. Where are you from? Ocala. Oh, you Krishan? Okay. All right. I love Krishan. He's very useful. And yeah. Say that again really loudly.
Not giving them what they deserve.
Not giving someone what they deserve. That's what mercy is not giving them what they deserve. That doesn't sound like a good thing when you think about it. Like if you deserved a paycheck and I didn't give it to you, let's say I hired you to mow my yard, and after you mowed it and edged it and all that, which you desperately need, so if you want to take care of that, that'd be great. If I didn't pay you for that, that wouldn't seem like mercy, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about not giving someone something bad that they might deserve. Alright? Not giving someone bad that they might deserve. Alright? That's a great definition of mercy. Grace is giving somebody something that giving someone something they didn't earn. Okay? So when someone gives you a birthday present, that's sort of grace. I mean, you haven't really earned it. You've lived for a year, but that's about all you've done. You know, the rest of us have done that too. So most of the world has done that for a year. But you get gifts. At Christmas they lie to you and tell you that if you're good, then Santa will bring you gifts, and if you're bad, that he will not bring you gifts, that you can somehow earn them. But none of you are good. I know it's not true because I was never good and I still got gifts. So those are things I didn't earn. And mercy is not giving me something like a punishment that I did earn. One time when I lived in Louisiana, as a matter of fact, in Bossier City, we were playing outside filling water balloons up. Alright? And when we were done, we just ran off to the next activity and we left the water running. The hose at my house, the spigot in the backyard. And we ended up getting in the car and driving to Mississippi for a week and then coming back. And the whole time, the spigot was running. I got some pretty big trouble for that, alright? My dad was like, who did this? And it was obvious because there were still water balloon remnants that we had done it. We had left the water running for a week. I don't remember what the water bill was, but that's why we had to sell my brother into slavery. So, just kidding, guys, I don't have a brother. At least not one that you guys know about. That reminds me of a really funny joke, but I'm not going to tell. Anyway, but my dad, I got punished for that, but he still loved me. He was merciful to me. He could have tried to make me work off all that money at 6 or 8. He could have tried that, but he didn't do that. He went to work and worked it off and paid off that huge bill. And what I want you to see about mercy is that mercy is only for people who are in a weak position. Alright? You only need mercy when you are in a bad way. When you're winning, you don't need mercy. How many of you have played a sport where there's a mercy rule? Alright? Why do they have that rule? Why do they have mercy rules in sports? You guys are the least participatory class so far, and you're my first one, so who knows? Maybe you're the most participatory, and the rest of the people will look at me with angry faces. Now, why do they have a mercy rule in sports? Who plays baseball in here? There's a 10-run rule. Why do they have a mercy rule? Because it's not any fun for a team who's already getting creamed to have to play inning after inning where they're giving up 8, 10 runs an inning and then just striking out 3 times, right? So they just end the game for mercy. That's why they call it a mercy rule. They end the game as a mercy to the other team because it's not any fun to get absolutely shellacked, all right? That's what mercy is. Well, you have to be in a position of weakness. We're going to look at 3 people, and the first person that we're going to look at is found in John chapter 4. So if you have your Bibles, you can turn there. That's probably too small for you to read. In John chapter 4, we're going to read the first 30 verses, and we're going to look at Jesus as he encounters someone who is in a position of weakness and who needs some mercy. All right. Now, this is God's holy word. Now, when Jesus learned that the Pharisees had heard that Jesus was making and baptizing more disciples than John, although Jesus himself did not baptize but only his disciples, he left Judea and departed again for Galilee. This is John chapter 4, since we're trying to get there. And he had to pass through Samaria. So he came to a town of Samaria called Sychar, near the field that Jacob had given to his son Joseph. Jacob's well was there. So Jesus, wearied as he was from his journey, was sitting beside the well. It was the 6th hour. There came a woman of Samaria to draw water. Jesus said to her, "Give me a drink," for his disciples had gone away into the city to buy food. The Samaritan woman said to him, "How is it that you, a Jew, ask for a drink from me, a woman of Samaria? For Jews have no dealings with Samaritans." And Jesus answered her, "If you knew the gift of God and who it is that is saying to you, 'Give me a drink,' you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water." And the woman said to him, "Sir, you have nothing to draw water with, and the well is deep. Where do you get that living water? Are you greater than our father Jacob? He gave us this well and drank from it himself, as did his sons and his livestock." Jesus said to her, "Everyone who drinks of this water will be thirsty again. But whoever drinks of the water that I will give him will never be thirsty forever. The water that I will give him will become in him a spring of water welling up to eternal life." The woman said to him, "Sir, give me this water so that I will not be thirsty or have to come here to draw water." And Jesus said to her, "Go call your husband and come here." And the woman answered him, "I have no husband." And Jesus said to her, "You are right in saying that I have no husband. For you have had 5 husbands, and the one you have now is not your husband. What you have said is true." The woman said to him, "Sir, I perceive that you are a prophet. Our fathers worshipped on this mountain, but you say that in Jerusalem is the place where people ought to worship." Jesus said to her, "Woman, believe me, the hour is coming when neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem will you worship the Father. You worship what you do not know, we worship what we know, for salvation is from the Jews. But the hour is coming, and is now here, when the true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and truth, for the Father is seeking such people to worship Him. God is spirit, and those who worship Him must worship in spirit and truth." And the woman said to him, "I know that the Messiah is coming, he who is called the Christ. When he comes, he will tell us all things." And Jesus said to her, "I who speak to you am he." Just then his disciples came back. They marveled that he was talking with a woman, but no one said, "What do you seek?" or "Why are you talking with her?" So the woman left her water jar and went away into the town and said to the people, "Come, see a man who told me all that I ever did. Can this be the Christ?" They went out of the town and were coming to him. All right, there are probably 50 points to be found in this passage. There are a million things to be found in this passage. This is a great, great, great passage. But I want to focus in on just a couple, because we're talking about mercy, about being an outcast, and how people who are in a position of weakness and need, those are the people that need mercy, and Jesus is all about that. So the first thing I want you to see is that it was a necessity for Jesus to show mercy. That Jesus went out of his way to find this woman. Now, the reason I say that is because this map is super tiny, and I apologize for that. It's also really pale. It's the best I can do on Google Maps. But, not Google Maps, Google Images. But Jesus is right about here, all right? This kind of area here is the promised land, Israel. And Jesus is right about here. And he's got to go up here. And so that means he has to pass through right here. And right here is Samaria. Alright? Now, what most Jews would do, if they were in Jerusalem, is they would go across the Jordan and go up the Jordan on outside the promised land until they got to Galilee, and then they would enter back in because they hated the Samaritans. They would not, they did not want to be around the Samaritans. Okay? But Jesus, it says that he had to pass through Samaria. In other words, he made it a point to go to a group of people who everyone else went way out of their way to avoid. When I lived in Jackson, I know there's some Jackson people here, I lived in Clinton, but I worked at a church that's in downtown Jackson on State Street. So I had to drive. There were two ways to get there. I could get on the interstate and drive about 20 miles, or I could drive about 5 miles directly there. But to drive 5 miles directly there, I had to go through the very worst parts of Jackson. This is where people who did not look like me, who did not act like me, and certainly did not have as much money as I did, even as a poor seminary student. I'm often marvel at how poor we were in seminary. But these people were very, very poor. And a lot of people would they would create interstates and loops of interstates to avoid people having to go through this part of Jackson. That is a modern-day Samaria. It is a place where people purposely avoid. And I want you to see something about Jesus right here. He had to go there. He had to go there. Now, our first application is this, all right? That if we would like to know how to love people who are outcasts, the first thing is that we're going to have to be around people that are outcasts. Outcasts are not going to come to us and be like, hey, show mercy to me. We're going to have to go and get them. All right? And that is exactly what Jesus did. That's called incarnational ministry. Jesus came to a bunch of outcasts and he saved them. That is, you are an outcast. You do not belong in heaven. You were dead in your transgressions and sins. There was no hope for you. You were an ugly dumpster baby. Read Ezekiel 16. I'm not kidding. You were a dumpster baby. And Jesus walked up to you in your blood out of his mercy and said, live. And that's a picture of the gospel. And we see that lived out right here. Jesus goes to a place where other people avoid. He goes to a place where other people avoid to show mercy. I bet, now I'm not asking you right now to go, those of you who live in Jackson, I'm not asking you to head down to Fortification, right, to Vincent and do ministry, although I think that ought to be a goal. But, let's just bring it down to your level really quick, all right? I bet there's someone at your school or in your church or even on this trip who lots of people in your group avoid. I bet that there's someone in your group or someone at your school, or someone in your lunch, or someone that lots of people avoid. If you want to be like Jesus, if you love Jesus and you would like to show the love that he's shown to you to others, one of the things that you're going to need to develop, and it's not something that comes easy to everyone, is you're going to need to develop a desire to go after people who feel alone. You should be looking. If you're a Christian, one of the things you should do in a group situation is be looking for this person who's uncomfortable and going after them to make them feel comfortable. That, you can pass out 1,000 tracts, you can memorize Westminster Catechism, all those things are awesome. You do that, you are well on your way to following Jesus. You go find someone who's uncomfortable and try to make them feel comfortable, you're well on your way to following Jesus, to taking up your cross and following him. So the first thing we see is Jesus had to go to Samaria. He felt a desire to go where other people avoided. Alright? That's the first thing. Let's go back by our crappy map, and I'll try to improve that map for the next hour. Sorry, guys. The other thing I want you to see is that Jesus, it was a personal risk to Jesus to even have a conversation with this woman. Alright? This is something that you would not pick up on now. Alright? You see men talking to women all the time. Like there's Marilyn back there. She's one of my chaperones. I talk to Marilyn. It's not scandalous, even though she's a Samaritan. And, no, she's not a Samaritan. She is not. She is a Montgomeryan. And, but it's not scandalous. But in Jesus' day, it was somewhat scandalous for a man to talk to a woman who was not his wife. Alright? It was even more scandalous for a rabbi to talk to a woman. It was even more scandalous for a man to talk to a woman by themselves if they were not married. It was even more scandalous. I know I just keep saying that. It was even more scandalous to try for a Jew to talk to a Samaritan regardless of their genders. But basically, we have the most scandalous situation possible. We have a Jewish rabbi man, all right, talking to a Samaritan woman, and not only a Samaritan woman, but a Samaritan woman with a really bad reputation on top of that. So, what I want you to see is just by talking to this woman, Jesus has put himself under scrutiny and criticism. He has opened himself up to criticism. People will look at that, even his disciples look at it and say, what do you think? They think in their hearts, what do you think you are doing? They don't question him because he's Jesus and he's already done some pretty amazing things. So they're like, all right, we're just going to follow you right now. But I don't know about what you're doing. That's how Peter talks. And John is more like, hey. Anyway, it was expected. What I want you to see is that for Jesus, it was not only expected, but it would have been approved. He would have been approved to have completely ignored this woman, to not look at her at all, to not talk to her at all. And instead of doing what he could have done, was expected to do, and would have been approved in doing, he instead recognizes her as a person. He looks her in the eye and he has a conversation with her. And he even goes as far as to put her in a position of power by asking something from her. Alright? Jesus doesn't need her to get water. Do you realize that? Jesus walked on water. He told the sea to shut it, and the sea shut it. Guys that are in my room at night, be more like the sea. Anyway, he doesn't need her, but he asked something of her. Guys, if you want to love someone who's an outcast, you don't just treat them as an outcast, you treat them as an equal, even as a superior. Notice what Jesus does. He puts himself in a position of need so that this lady might help him. He empowers her. Alright? He empowers her. He dignifies her. He treats her not as garbage, which is what he was fully in his right to do. But he empowers her. He treats her not only as an equal, but he even asks for something from her. And the fact that he's talking to her is scandalous. Let me tell you something about India really quick. One of my groomsmen in my wedding was from India, okay? He was an Indian with a dot, not a feather, if I can use that racist terminology to describe him. But that's where we are. So, his name was Dinesh Kumar Selvaraj. He was a groomsman in my wedding. He's one of my best friends. He busted my lip one time, like right before a date with a frisbee. It was amazing. And he's really funny. He talked like this. He says, "Good." Honestly, good. That's what he says. When I brought him to Thanksgiving one year, and no one could understand him but me, and it was awesome watching my redneck family from Baldwin, Mississippi, try to talk with this guy from India who spoke better English than they did. They were like, "Now, what did you say?" It was awesome. Well, Dinesh is from India, and in India they have a caste system. It's still in place in people's minds. They've tried to abolish it many times, but they have a caste system. Now, in order to understand what I'm talking about, I want you to imagine this. That there are certain levels, that you're born into a certain level, and you cannot leave that level ever, alright? And when you're born, who you can marry is extremely limited. It's already been decided. What jobs you can have already been decided. If you're in the lower caste, then there are only certain things you can do, alright? It's nothing like America. There's a social stigma attached. The lowest caste is called the untouchables, and if you touch one of them, I mean, it's an awful, awful thing if you're in the higher caste, all right? Well, just recently, I guess in the last 5 to 10 years, they've started letting the untouchables run for office, for public office. And one of the untouchables won an office. He was elected to an office, a lower level like comptroller, city manager of some kind office. He moves to his office. He serves 2 terms, All right. Then he elects to not. He elects to not run for re-election, and he leaves. The next person who won his seat was from a higher caste. He had every single thing in that office taken out and burned. The carpet, the desk, the books, everything that man had touched, that untouchable had touched, he had every single thing burned. And he put all new stuff in the office because he could not be involved with an untouchable. Okay? That goes on today. Alright? That is the kind of situation that we have right here. We have someone who is in the very highest echelon, Jesus, dealing with someone who is in the very lowest echelon, this woman. Alright? And he is not treating her like that, as she deserves, according to the culture. He is treating her, he is showing her mercy without ever having to do anything. Just by talking to her, he is showing her mercy. I hope you see that. So, we've seen that he felt like it was a necessity. Jesus felt like it was a necessity to do that. And we've seen that Jesus felt like not only was it a necessity, but it put him in an awkward position. And let me tell you this too. If you want to love people, if you want to show Christ's love to those who don't feel welcome, it's going to involve people who are very comfortable and very welcome looking at you and saying, why are you doing that? Why are you bringing that person into our group? They might not say that out loud, but they will say it with the way they look at you and the way they treat you. And let me tell you, lots of people looked at Jesus and said things in certain tones to Jesus because of stuff like this. All right. The third thing I want you to see is that the reason this lady's an outcast is because she is shamed. All right. Not everyone is an outcast because they deserve it. Some people have made poor decisions. Other people, we're going to talk more about that later on, because he's going to deal with someone who had an affliction that he most certainly did not deserve. But no matter what, whether they've earned their way to a bad reputation or whether they were born into it or whatever, shame is the deal. Shame is what makes people outcast. Shame is why you have awkward situations, because people are ashamed. Have you ever been ashamed? I've never felt ashamed and it's been awesome. Not once have I felt ashamed and been like, this is great. I am ashamed. No, not once. Every time I feel like human garbage, okay? Every time that I feel ashamed, I just want to crawl in a hole and die. Let me tell you a story about someone who was embarrassed and ashamed that wasn't me, all right? I work with a very, very, very respected pastor. So we're narrowed down to 3 people. And this pastor was doing a wedding. And as is his wont, he will get in a circle and hold hands with the bride and all the bridesmaids right before they do the ceremony, and he will pray with them. And he was doing the wedding. He was not the only pastor. There was another pastor, the groom's pastor, from his church, was going to assist in the wedding. And as this pastor got in the circle and held hands, he reached out to the other pastor, and the other pastor didn't hold his hand. And he looked at the other pastor and said, "What's wrong, buddy? You don't got a hand?" And the guy said, "Actually, I only got the one." He had lost one in an accident. You know, and now at that very moment, my friend, the pastor. Now I've been in that situation so many times. Not that exact situation, but the same feeling. What do you think he wanted to do? I think he wanted to find the smallest hole and crawl in there and live for 1,000,000 years and then come out, and hopefully maybe he could continue on with his existence after everyone. That is embarrassing, right? That is shameful, okay? And that's just an honest mistake, all right? What if you can feel that shameful about an honest mistake? What about when you really did something shameful? Now, I just want to be honest with you guys, all right? I don't know each one of you individually. Even the ones in my group, I don't know you. I don't know everything that you're into, but I promise you this: you've done something shameful. Everybody I know has. You've done something shameful, and every one of us has something. That if I had the power of like mind reading, and I could read into your mind, and I would start naming out things that you've done, that is your biggest fear, because your greatest fear is that someone would know you completely. All right. Would know everything about you, everything that you've ever thought and said and did. That's your greatest fear, and yet that's also your greatest need. That's why we put ourselves out there. That's why we do stupid stuff on the RYM camera to get on the video. That's why we tell our boyfriend or our girlfriend that we love them when we're not even really sure what love means. Because we want someone to know us and to still love us. That's what we want. That's what we want more than anything. And yet that is also what we are the most afraid of, is that someone would really know what we're like. That is the most frightening thing. And this woman had a reputation. Did you notice that they said it was the 6th hour that she was going to get water? Now, let me do some math for you. If daybreak is at 6 a.m., then that means it's about noon. It's about lunch. Which explains why the disciples were going. Maybe they're going to get some lunch. You know, they're hitting up the local McAllister's, the Chappies, or whatever it is. I don't know what you guys go to. Huh? Yeah, that's great. I don't even know what you said. That's awesome. Everyone's got their own little lunch place in their own town. I love them. Although Montgomery people, Chappies is way overrated. So just throwing that out there. Anyway, so it's about lunch. Now, and she's coming to get water. And she's the only one there. Now, do you know why she was the only one there at noon to get water? Do you want to have a guess? Okay, yeah, she was embarrassed. But why was no one else there? Yeah, everyone's working, and what else? It's super duper hot. All right, at noon in Samaria. All right, pretty much all the time, it's super duper hot. Alright? And so, it's like watering your lawn. Now, I'm old now. I'm 33, and I'm now old. Like, I came home from Colorado last week, or, well, it was Sunday, and the first thing I said when I pulled in the driveway was like, that yard needs cutting. Like, that's where I am now. One day you'll be there, gentlemen. It's very scary. But you look at the yard. I used to hate mowing the yard. I used to purposely mess up the yard so my dad would mow it himself and not me. It only took like 3 years for that to finally work. I think by my senior year, he was like, you know what, I'm just going to mow it. Don't even worry about it. You're terrible at it. And I was like, and now I worry about my yard. You know what I never do with my yard? I never water it in the middle of the day. You know why I never water it in the middle of the day? Because it wastes a ton of water. Alright? Because a ton of water gets evaporated by the heat. So it's a huge waste of water. You water your lawn like at 5 or 6 in the morning or 5 or 6 at night when it's cool. And in this time, these people, they would go and get water at 5 or 6 in the morning or 5 or 6 at night. You know, they would go very early because it was cool. But not this woman. This woman comes at noon because, as you've rightly said, she is embarrassed. She has shame, very powerful shame, and so she doesn't want to be around anyone else because everyone knows what kind of woman she is. All right? What I want you to see is this, is that outcasts, and you can include yourself in this group, we will go a long way to avoid shame. We will do very difficult things to avoid shame. Would you like me to reveal a time in my life where I've done something incredibly stupid to avoid shame? I think I will. When I was in college, how much time do we have? Oh, we're good, we're good. How much, let's see. When I was in college, I was a freshman at Mississippi State, and for the first couple Sundays I went to church, but then one Sunday I just decided, I stayed out really late on Saturday night, and I decided I'm just going to skip church, because that's what you can do when you're in college. It's up to you. Your parents aren't there to make you go. So I decided to skip church. Well, I woke up, and on Sunday morning, about 10:30, 11, and I skipped church, and I was hungry. I looked at my little mini fridge in my dorm, and there was no food. And I checked my bank account, and there's not enough money to go get something. The only resource that I have at this point is I have a Bulldog card, or it's like this card they give you when you're a freshman, and it has money on it. They force you to put some money on it. It's this racket that colleges do. So the only place I can go to get food is the cafeteria. All right. The only problem is if I go to the cafeteria, everyone's going to see that I skipped church. All right. All my friends. So what did I do? I went and took a shower. I put on a suit, and I went to lunch with my Bible, all right? No one asked me, it was a genius move, I must say, but no one asked me if I had gone to church. Everyone just assumed that I had because I was dressed for church. Now, how ridiculous is that, okay? How silly is that? I was so scared, I was so ashamed that I went way out of my way to make sure that no one thought that I didn't go to church. Guys, we do stuff like that all the time. There are people sitting by you right now, to your left and to your right, and they are doing everything they can to avoid shame, just like this woman. They're no different from this woman. What I want you to see is that you are this woman, all right? You're going to come back away from this class and think, how can I be more like Jesus? I want to be like Jesus. But what you see is, first of all, that you are this woman, and you will never show mercy to anyone until you see that you are this woman. You have shame. All right? Lastly, I just want you to see how powerful grace is. All right? I want you to see how powerful grace is, and how grace is the answer. Grace and mercy has to be the answer to all of our awkwardness and all of our outcastness, if I can use that word, or make it up. Jesus does something that you could never do, okay? He tells this woman about herself. There's no way that you could do that. You could never be Jesus. You could never walk up to a woman like this and say, oh, well, you've had 5 husbands. Because you don't know that about people, right? But Jesus does, and He uses His power to speak the truth to this woman about herself. In other words, what He says to this woman is, I know what you're like. All right? And I want you to see that Jesus has already earned the right to say that to this woman. That He's earned the right to say something hard to this woman. All right? Something difficult. Guys, your job is not to go out and just blast people. Well, everyone knows that you're a this, or everyone knows that that's not your job, all right? You can say hard things to people. You can speak the truth in love, but the thing is you have to do it in love. If someone knows that you love them, you can tell them anything, and they will listen to it. They might not like it, but they will listen to it. Jesus says to this woman, oh, well, just go and get your husband, and I'll give you this living water. She goes, I have no husband. He says, you're right to say that you have no husband. In fact, you've had 5 husbands, and the man you're with now, he's not your husband. And how does this woman respond? I just want you to, this doesn't necessarily have anything to do with mercy, but I just want you to see this, because this is how this woman was probably Presbyterian. And the reason I know this is because when she is called on the carpet for her sin, the first thing she does is ask a theological question. Okay, he says in verse 18, for you've had 5 husbands, and the one you have now is not your husband. What do you say is true? And the woman says to him, and I laugh every time I read this, I can't help it, Sir, I perceive that you are a prophet. Our fathers worshipped on this mountain, but you say that in Jerusalem is the place where you ought to worship. What I want you to see about this woman is that all of a sudden this woman realizes that she is fully known, and it has undone her. She does not like it, all right? She recognizes that not only does everyone in town know what kind of woman she is, but Jesus, this complete stranger, knows exactly who she is. Even if he didn't have the omniscience to know her exact life story, he could have deduced it simply from the fact that she was drawing water at noon with no one else, and the fact that she desperately wanted this living water. Why? Because she didn't want to draw water anymore. And so what she tries to do, and this is what you're going to try to do when you feel like you're an outcast or when you feel shame, is she tries to put up a shield, and her shield is theology, which is a very favorite shield of Presbyterians, where she starts asking this complicated question about worshiping on the mountain. And I want you to see that Jesus answers that question. He does in verses 21 through 24. All right? He answers that question, but he also completely blows through that question as if it's nothing, because he is more concerned with people's hearts. And here's what I want you to see about mercy, okay, and about how we show mercy to other people, is that, one, we do it with truth, but we're more concerned with their hearts than we are with their behavior. We're more concerned. People do awkward things. We had a kid in our youth group, all right? He's since graduated, but he was on the autism spectrum somewhere. I'm not skilled enough to tell you where, all right? He said awkward things and did awkward things, all right? And you know what that was? It was a great opportunity for our kids to love someone. We're not done yet, so you need to stay out. It was a great opportunity for our kids to love someone who was in desperate need. And let me tell you, there's some awkward situations that arose out of that. He would ask every girl in our group to prom. Okay? Even if one said yes, he would continue asking. He would ask every girl in our group to prom, and none of them really wanted to go. And so they would do things like, and this is not me, this is them, they would like get 3 of them together, and they would all get a prom dress, and they would all go to prom with him. All right? 3 of our girls would go to prom with him. All right? Because, and that's a perfect picture of this, by the way, because, you know, for a lot of different reasons. But he took 3, this is awesome, this kid in our group took 3 really beautiful girls to prom. Like, everyone else walked in with one day, and he's like, what's up, gentlemen? This is how I roll now. But they were more concerned with his heart than they were his actions. He would do awkward things. It was trying at times. It was constantly trying. But we were more concerned with showing him love than we were with him, like, doing something that we were uncomfortable with. And my question to you is this, would you rather be comfortable or would you rather love people? I know what choice Jesus made, okay? I know what choice Jesus made. He often chose love over comfort. Often. That's putting it mildly when you think about the cross. But would you rather be comfortable or would you rather show mercy? Would you rather be comfortable or would you love people? If we're going to love people, the first thing we have to see is it's going to cost us, it's going to make us uncomfortable, and that's okay. We can be uncomfortable for other people because Jesus died for us. I hope that you see that. Let's see here. We're supposed to be done. Oh, we're not supposed to be done at 10:45. I was worried. We've got 4 minutes. Okay. So far, does anyone have any questions? Normally, well, not normally, but the past, I've taught Calvinism for a couple years in a row, and I always try to leave some time for questions, and there's never enough time. I don't imagine there'll be a ton of time for, a lot of questions about this. It's pretty self-explanatory. I hope that you did see that Jesus loved this person, and that it cost him, and then he went out of his way to love them, and he targeted them. And then when he targeted them, he didn't treat them like a special case. He just treated them like a peer. And that's what, by the way, that's what the awkward people in your group want. Alright? That's what the people who don't feel at home or feel like outcasts want, is they want to just be treated like a peer. All you have to do is try to be their friend. This last practical thing, and then I'm going to pray. Do you want to practice mercy? Find someone in your group, even here, who you think, man, they might not feel at home. Just find out what they like. Just ask them, find out what they like to do, and talk to them about it. If they like Nintendo, Wii, talk to them about Nintendo Wii. If they like, ballet, talk to them about ballet. Talk to them about something that they like, something that matters to them. That is that's baby step gospel, but just try that out. Try that out. Let me pray for us. Lord, unless we see ourselves as outcasts, we are never going to be able to show mercy. And Lord, unless your Spirit works in our hearts, unless you put the truth in us, all of this is in vain. Lord, I just pray that you would do that. There's some kids in here that really feel like outcasts, maybe all of them. Lord, there are also some kids that really feel totally comfortable and at home. Lord, I just pray that you would rattle our cages a little bit, that you would do it in a good way like you did with this lady, so that we can walk to our friends and say, let me tell you about somebody who knows everything I've ever done. Or what a testimony. We just pray these things in Christ's name and for His sake. Amen. All right, guys. Thank you all.